Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, you know this is one of my favorite space right at this moment because I get an opportunity to honor our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things very expensive. Time. What a precious commodity. 24 hours given to every single creature on this planet. And because of that, we have to learn how to value her. We have to learn how to respect and honor her. And I'm telling you the honest truth. When you do, your relationships become more intense. All of your actions, your deeds become purposeful. It becomes different. Your life, your mindset, everything, because you understand the value of time. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created Michelle right before me, man. And it puts some stuff in her that she is bringing to give and offer us. And we have a front seat row to that. And she has, due to her journey, wisdom, knowledge, insight, all of these precious stuff that she is coming and sharing with us so that we can become better human spirits. And we just want to welcome her, honor her, and give her the space so that she can educate us as to how beautiful we are. Thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
It's an honor. One of the things that I've been telling my audience for the longest while is that we are servants if you get the opportunity to come here. And I always ask them, I always tell them, try to tell them, Michelle, hurry up and get there because I know there's a big cost to become a servant because in the space of a servant, one becomes humble. You have to be you honor the other individual. You have to give space. You have to be all of those things that you do as a servant. One bows to the other and one is honoring the other. So my question to you is, how do you serve mankind?
Good question. In fact, it's interesting because the reason why I am in service to people now is because I got to the point in my life where I felt like I wasn't helping anyone and it just kept nagging at me. So now I'm in service to the world in a couple ways. With my job, I'm a coach and I coach mostly women, but also men, and just help them learn to be more present, focus on what is working in their life, and to stop feeling so frantic all the time, which I think can really be a gift when you're used to just working, running, using those 24 hours that you mentioned that we all have to just get as much done as possible without really enjoying it or being present.
That's a noble assignment. I love it. I always tell people, Michelle, there's a couple of things. And I look at not what you do, not as a job. You said the coaching. That is part of your assignment. Our assignment is multifaceted, meaning that we usually leave that job because the programmers are always saying to us, this is, you get married, you're born, you go to your house, you live, you die, you go into college, you get your first job, you get your husband and your wife, the 2.5 kids, the picket fence and the dog, and don't forget the cars. And then we're going to allow you to have a vacation for 2 weeks once a year, and you better get back in, and then you have all these different things, and then you die. And I listened to that picture and I look at it and I was like, wow, that's one of the most morbid things I've ever heard in my entire life. But when we find our assignment, Michelle, like you have, where you are serving individuals to see the greatness in them because you are, through your questioning and your probing, you're allowing them and giving them an insight into themselves because they're so busy. They're not even able to know that they can ask themselves those questions. And so you have a wonderful assignment to get them to see the greatness of themselves. And I honor any one of you guys because To be a coach is such a noble profession, to get a chance to witness some beautiful transition, to see people move from dark perception to light. It's beautiful stuff. So, one of the things that we do here at Threads of Enlightenment is to try to travel back in that time machine and go back, and we have access through the memory to go back into the spaces, Michelle, that I call that we reside there. We reside there for a few years as we're moving through life, heading to our quote unquote independence and becoming our own person. What was your family unit like?
Well, I grew up in an extremely supportive and loving family where I was told I could be anything I wanted. I was extremely fortunate in that. I had a chance to get a great education. I was encouraged to do so. So I feel like I grew up so lucky that there was a point in my life where I actually felt guilty for it.
Wow, that I've never heard that one before. Here you are. You had, let's put it this way, that Hallmark picture lifestyle was just relayed to us by Michelle, and so she had
Yeah.
the life that
Yeah,
we
exactly. The kind of family where you're like, what's really going on there though? But it was just like it looked. I really really won the lottery in where I got to be born, the family that I got to be born into.
that is awesome. So after winning the lottery, and you're in this family that you are present in, and it's, as I said, we both agree that it's a Hallmark moment. How
Yes.
did you how did you grow mentally in that type of a lifestyle, that type of life? What was the young girl, that young woman, Michelle, that is coming up?
Yeah, I think it really gave me the opportunity to be a very confident person and to be able to work hard and do the things that I wanted to do. And it sort of gave me like a sky's the limit mentality. And I
Hmm.
think that enabled me to put together in my mind what I wanted to do. And when you were just giving that sort of generic example, that was actually all exactly what I was going for. So I'm going to go to college, I'm going to get a job, I'll get married, I'll have a nice house, I'll have kids, I'll keep getting promoted. And that is, winning at life. And so I feel like more easily than a lot of people who didn't have that support or access to education, I was able to do all of that. So I just got to a certain point in my life where I was like, okay, check, check, check. I've got everything I ever wanted. And that's sort of where the problem began, in that it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel fulfilling. It didn't feel like what I was supposed to be doing. Even before that, the part about the 2.5 kids, I always wanted to have kids. And then we couldn't have kids after many attempts and medical interventions and all those kinds of things. And that was really the first time in my life. I know this sounds obnoxious, but it's true. That was the first time in my life where I ever tried really hard at something and I wasn't able to get it. And that was really a moment of realization for when things are out of our control, sometimes we just have to accept them. And I did not come to that quickly. I fought and made appointments and spent so much money and just kept gunning for that. And finally realized, okay, this isn't in the cards for me. This is not how this is supposed to happen for me. And like often happens in life, when you're able to let go, what I now think of as like letting the universe deliver what's supposed to be happening for you all the time, then we ended up adopting. And both of my children, I feel like, have always been meant to be my children. Like that was the message that I was supposed to be getting when I was just fighting and trying so hard to make something happen instead of just allowing it.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest lessons, if you will, for the human being to learn, because we always feel that we can find a way, we can do it. And especially when we have that Hallmark background where you are told that you can do everything and then you can't do this, it'll get into that part of you and annoy the heck out of you that you couldn't achieve
Yes,
it,
yes, and it
and
also
there's a dark space.
yes, and it made me feel like then I was wrong as a person, like something is
Yeah.
wrong with me if I can't make this happen. Like I really made that mean something about me as a human and that I wasn't enough and I wasn't trying enough. And when you're basing your whole enoughness on your accomplishments and then you can't have a certain accomplishment, what does that mean about you?
Yeah, that I had a discussion, Michelle, about with someone a few podcasts back, and she was talking about suicide and stuff like that, and she was talking about part of her, in a sense, her identity was in this particular thing, and when that started to die, she started contemplating suicide, not realizing that it wasn't her that was dying; it was just that part of her, that that character that was. It was time to let go and to move to another phase of development to create another character, and when she said it, it was very profound to me because I never looked at it like that. So we
Yeah,
have, and what I recognize in my life is that there are character deaths that are happening in our lives all the time
I love that. I
and
love
will bring
thinking
us
of it that
to
way.
despair. I never thought about it until she said that. And
I
so here
love
you
that.
have a quote unquote character death happening within you because you're told that you ought to be able to have those children and those white picket fence. So after this character death began in your life, you said you began to speak to yourself harshly and condemn yourself. When you were there speaking harshly to yourself, how did you begin to transition to, as you said, learn to let go and allow the universe or the quantum field, as we are told as well, to help you manifest your need for your children? What was that
Well,
process
I
like?
will say I hung on for every tooth and nail. I did not want to let that go. So when I couldn't have a baby, I just worked harder in my career and worked at getting further ahead in my career so that I could at least feel good about that. So I can't do this one thing, but I'm going to do this other thing. So I don't want to give the impression that I just had this realization one day and then I was like, I'm just going to let go. No, I couldn't let go of it. I just focused that obsession on something else. And my husband at the time was, I mean, he had had it with my entire focus on this and that I couldn't let it go. And he was the one who told me, like, we're not going to make it if you can't rethink, the way that we might have a child. And I was never opposed to adoption. I've always had like just an intuition that I was going to adopt. And when I was young and didn't have kids and wasn't married, I used to volunteer at a home that was for homeless children. And I loved those kids. And I would used to think like, I wish that one of these kids could become my kid. So I feel like all along I was getting clues that that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah,
But it's like I wasn't open enough to hear it. So I think the combination of all of those things one day just made me think I need to take this out of my hands. And so I told my ex-husband at the time, I just need you to make the decisions about what we do next. Like I've lost the capacity to make good decisions in this area. And so he chose this adoption agency. We went through and did all the things. And I actually wanted to do a different adoption agency. And then I said, never mind, I forgot. I'm not weighing in. You decide. So he decided. And about 4 months later, we ended up getting matched to our son's birth mother. The birth mothers chose the adoptive parents at this particular agency. And so, that was very quick and unusual for it to be fast. But we found out that he had been born and that she had chosen us. And within a 24-hour period from even getting that phone call, we were back home with our child. And it just felt like, okay, this is what all that was for. It just made sense immediately.
yeah. It's funny thing, Michelle. Here you are as a young individual working, volunteering, which is really powerful imagery to have this young girl volunteering with, you know, children. And you made a statement, and I tell people we are very powerful beings, and especially when we're younger, because there's no interruption in the field of our mind and our imagination, if you will. As we get older, things begin to interrupt it. And here is this young girl had this inclination that she's going to be adopting children, and the older girl is fighting not to adopt the child, which is really, really funny to me because this little girl had this inclination inside of her way before. And she, that little girl, manifested that child when you are an older woman. The power of the
Yeah.
uninterrupted thought mind field. It takes years, but manifestation does take place. And here's this young girl manifested when you were an older woman, what she felt
Yep.
inside of her being. Powerful stuff. So
Yeah.
here
I'd
you are,
never thought about it that way.
but there it is. She felt it and she expressed it. And that's one of the things in creation. When someone is creating, you must speak your creation, what you want. You must verbalize it, you must express it and give it an identity, you give it clarity. And this young individual gave it clarity, and it took some time to manifest because she couldn't have a child and make those type of decisions. She had to be a grown woman. And so here you are.
Hmm.
I see a couple of things in your personality that you've been talking about from your story. This control freak is in the middle of all this stuff.
Totally.
This woman that likes to be in control. And so
Yeah.
here is this woman that likes to be in control. In your hallmark bringing, Michelle, where did she pick that up from? There's a genesis to that story somewhere.
Yes, yes, I think so. I think that the part that I was trying to control was other people's opinion of me being perfect, basically. So I got a lot. I'm the oldest child, and I got a lot of good feedback as far as like, oh, you're so smart, and you're so all this good feedback. And so I, even as a child, made that my enoughness. I didn't realize that I was doing it, but it was like, well, I have to be successful, and not just successful, but everybody else needs to know it as well. Like I want other people to think that about me. And you and I both know that there is no way to control other people's opinions of us, but you sure can spend a lot of energy.
Yeah, most of our life, don't we? As we
Yes.
try to do that until I call it that day of visitation, Michelle, where we have an opportunity where the world crashes and then we have to make a decision. We embark on this, what is called the journey. And the journey begins to, this is my advice to people. I said, you become the perpetual investigator of yourself. I call that place right there enlightenment. Why? Because as you become enlightened about you, you are studying basically human behavior, human thought pattern, how one relates to thoughts, how one relates to emotions, all of these things. And you are usually your first client. And so you are learning all of these principles within yourself. And those are the same principles that you'll utilize later on in your life. So here you are, you manifested this child while you were this young girl, and this older woman now who is able to be a mother have this child quickly. What did that do to your world? Because your mind now has to make some adjustment very quickly. That
Yes,
here's this child
exactly.
here.
Yeah,
So how did you
it
make that adjustment?
I really started to understand the pressure of being a parent and having a career at the same time. And he was and is, and I have a daughter too who was adopted a few years later, but they're the most important thing to me, where before my career had been the most important thing to me and my family, but not I didn't have kids. So that was a really big adjustment. I had a lot of guilt about not being with my son enough because I was working, but yet I loved work. So it was kind of the crashing together of two things that where I wanted to spend my time. But it did really make me much more intentional. I felt like it really shrunk the other things that I did in life because it was pretty much at that point just work and spending time with my family became like my everything.
Yeah, as you said, your world becomes smaller because you need to get focused and start. How did you begin to introduce the boundaries? Because here you are, from what it sounds like, a type A personality when it comes to work, that go-getter. How did you begin to set the boundaries between that realm and your family? Because you now have to learn how to set
Yes.
boundaries between
But
that
as
because,
is a
you know,
as this has been a theme in my life, I don't let go of things easily, especially when I'm going to make them happen. Anytime I get in that make it happen energy now, I'm like, oh, it's like a red light goes off in my mind. But at the time, I didn't realize it. So I just decided to give 100% on both of those fronts. Like, for example,
mhm.
my son made all of his baby food by hand. When did I have time to do that? And why couldn't I just buy good baby food at the store? But things like that, like I would go over the top on the kid stuff and then over the top on work stuff as well to accommodate for the fact that I would stop working at 5 o'clock, which was unusual because I used to work later than that. But then I would spend time with my son, put him to bed, and then often go back to work later on. So I didn't really give up anything. I just worked harder at both of them. And then it was really adopting our second child, my daughter, where I got to the point where I could not do that. I feel like sometimes you can pull that off with one kid, but two, it was just like, there is no way that this is going to work. And I looked at my whole life and realized at some point, I think my daughter was like 2 or so at that time. So that means my son would have been 5. Like, I'm doing this, I'm pulling this off. I have the life that I would have dreamed of. If you would have seen like my vision board from college about what I wanted to create in my life, I had all those things, the house, the job, the kids, the husband, everything. But none of it felt good because I was just running around like a chicken with my head cut off at all times and having trouble being present, really present anywhere. And so that was really sort of the breaking point for me.
So after you began to break or crash and burn, I tell people that crash and burn
Yes.
is manifest in so many different ways. And Michelle talks about hers. There are sicknesses and disease, broken relationships. There's so many different ways one can crash and burn. But the outcome and the affordability to begin a different type of journey is afforded the individual at that point in time. So here you are. You've achieved everything that the programmers said that you ought to, but
Yes.
not exactly how, but you got there. The job, the husband, the wife, and the kids, and the what color was your fence? I'm just
It
kidding.
was it was actually wood. It was brown, but close enough. If I felt like it, I could have had it
Close
painted
enough.
white.
Yeah, so you could have had it. So you've achieved everything, and you realize at that moment after you've achieved it all that they told us and they pointed to everyone that this is what you must do. And if you do that, you are going to be the happiest creature on the planet and all will be well. In reality, Michelle, all is not well. When that happened to you, what began to transpire within you, the deep part of you, Michelle, the woman that is this professional woman, the mother now with 2 children, the perfectionist, all of that is coming down brick by brick. What did you?
Yeah. I think the first thing was just starting to visualize that my life could be different than that. So, as an example, I had always thought I can never get divorced because even though I thought I wanted to at that time, I just knew, quote unquote, it wasn't an option for me. Like my parents were still married, people in my family weren't really divorced. It just wasn't an option for me. And first, something happened in my brain where I allowed myself to think about an alternative reality. And you know very well from manifesting that that's really the first step, is to be able to imagine that it could possibly be true. So I would have like
Mm-hmm.
little visions where I could be a single mom and that would be okay. And then I've always had the desire to help other people. And it's funny because now I'm a life coach, but like my work coworkers, several of them used to call me their life coach. My best friend always called me her life coach, you know, like a running joke. It was like I had been
Mm-hmm.
doing this
Yep.
job all along, but it just wasn't my career.
All
And
along.
so
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast while I was folding laundry one night, and the guest was a life coach. And it was the first time that I had actually heard from someone who did this as their job, and she was explaining what she does and how she helps people. And it really hit me like a bolt of lightning. I was like, that's it. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. That's supposed to be my career. And so I started researching it like in that moment. And within 24 hours, I had found Martha Beck, who's a best-selling author and also has a life coaching course. I signed up for it, $7,000. I signed up for that. I still had a full-time job and 2 kids and a husband. I had no idea how I was going to find the time to do that, but it was just like, okay, this is that thing. So then I started being able to imagine myself with that as my career. And my brain would offer me thoughts like, well, you can't possibly do that. You'll never make the kind of money that you're making now. Or people are going to think you're crazy if you switch from your steady, successful corporate job to do this. So I could sort of see both of those things. I could see the potential, and then I could see the thoughts that my brain was offering me about why it was a terrible idea.
But I think that's what it does. You have the dance between the subconscious mind and the natural mind by way of the program. The subconscious mind, they don't know how to program that part of us because they don't tell people it even existed. And so when that part of us begins to step up, if you will, we have to give the subconscious mind permission to do things. And we do that through imagination. We do that through different modalities, meditation. We do that through all of these journaling, these different tools that we do and utilize and allow the subconscious being to express itself. Now, what you were doing, that dance that you were seeing, was the possibility with the subconscious mind and the reality. And I tell people the facts that we look at the natural world and those facts. But the subconscious mind deals in truth. And these two
Mm-hmm.
things, one has to survive, one has to surrender to the other. One is going to take control. They are
Yes.
battling for control. One is going to take it. And one has, because we are born into the natural realm, we are here with the natural mind. And he has been running the show for a long time. And then when it comes time for that transition to take place, all hell breaks loose. So here you are
Yeah.
in the midst of a whirlwind because your imagination is part of it is I could see myself as a single mom. And then this other reality just became real to you. Like, wait a minute. And let me stop and tell you listeners, let me invite you into this space. Michelle, I have a habit of inviting the listeners to move from listeners to transition into hearers. Hearers will change their life. The listener will listen. But you said you were listening to a podcast and then you said, and then I heard what she said. And I tell people that hearing is the subconscious being. Your natural being, you have your ears that hear because Jesus said, those who have ears, let them hear. So that means there's a second set of ears that the individual have, and that's the internal ear. And you heard with that subconscious being, and when that subconscious being, that truth step in, that subconscious being will do everything possible to make that truth a reality to you. And you will pay the $7,000. You'll do the study. You'll find a way because it made a decision, and you're going to do it. And you're going to look back and go, I don't know how I did that, but that was only mentioned by your natural mind, but your subconscious
Yes.
mind knew exactly what it was doing.
Yes, absolutely. And the real game changer for me, because I was sort of going along with it, as I said. But what was really powerful to me is when I learned that the thoughts coming into my head were optional. So, for example, if
Yes.
I'm thinking other people are going to think I'm crazy for quitting this job, it was like, yeah, I'm sure that's what my brain is telling me. I had previously always taken those as like the truth with a capital T. Like if it was coming into my head, that was the only option. And so being able to watch my own thoughts, which to your point, I learned through life coach training, meditation, journaling, all those kinds of things, to see those as thoughts that my brain has offered, but not thoughts that I had to believe. And then to understand that I could work believing thoughts that I wanted to believe instead. That's where I was really able to go and make big changes in my life.
And that's what I invite all of you guys that are listening to this conversation. There's a creator that is housed within you. And that creator, most of us have been living our life on the default programming, those thought fields that Michelle mentioned, that first thought that comes and says that people are going to say this and whatever. We believe that to be true. But when you become a designer, a creator, you now pick which ones you want to grow, which ones you choose to meditate, which ones you choose to do these things with, and allow them to grow. Your thought field of your mind is always fluid. It's always moving. It's not concrete. It becomes concrete when you pick one and make that the one that will manifest. You are creating your world, and that's what you have to do. And you're actually rewiring your entire mindset, which will in turn rewire your belief system, which will in turn create habits, and your life will change. So here you are learning all the principles. As you begin to apply them, Michelle, what did you begin to see manifest as you began to apply the meditation aspect, the journaling aspect, all of these powerful tools, your
Mm-hmm.
imagination, all of these are tools
Mm-hmm.
that allows us to communicate and allow the subconscious being or the soul of that individual to express itself. What did you begin to notice in your life?
A calmness that I had not felt. I think again, this is like part of who I am. I've always had a calm nature, but because I was running so fast and trying so hard, and I feel like I had lost what I'm naturally supposed to be. So I wouldn't say I became something new. I became who I am supposed to be. Like I stripped away all those things. I love the way that you called it a character death, because I did feel like I was playing a character, not the character of the real me, but playing a character of someone who was professional and put together and all those things, and trying to be perceived as perfect. And so when you let go of that, there's just such a calmness to your life. And sometimes I would wake up and have a lot of anxious thoughts in the morning, and I would had a whole routine of things that I would do. One of them was journaling, one of them was meditation. And I could just bring myself to that calm place where I knew, for example, if a thought comes into my head of what are people going to think about me starting this new business and totally changing my life, that I could say, oh, I see that my brain offered that thought because that's the habit, but I'm going to remind myself that I don't actually care what other
Yeah.
people are thinking about me. It's
Yeah.
learning how to,
Yeah.
and I still get those thoughts in my head. I just don't give
Oh,
them
yeah.
any value anymore. Sometimes it'll come up and I'll almost chuckle to myself like, dang, that one dies hard. It still keeps coming and coming. But I used to 10 out of 10 care what other people thought about me. And now I care like a zero, but not in a way that I don't care about humans. I care about humans so much more. I truly
Mm-hmm.
care about them. I don't care about what they're thinking about me. I care about what I'm thinking about me. Like, am I living my
Yeah.
life in the way that I want to live?
Yeah. I think what the journey does to us, Michelle, is help us to remember who we are. I think
Yep.
that young girl knew who she was. That's why I said earlier, there's no interruption there. There's no dark beliefs there. There's no other program. She was absolutely, might have been humming and doing her thing, and that subconscious being is right there humming with her and communicating, and she probably had. And so what happens to us, we get distracted, and the journey comes to help us to remember who we are and tap back into that identity and then make that a reality. So here you are moving through your life, because I'm interested now, as so much going on. You graduated, you got your certificate, you earned it, and at the same time, while you have the theory part of your training, life itself is giving you the lab part of the training. So you're having both
Absolutely.
of it at the same time. And so you have a full understanding of what that piece of paper is all about, because you're living it on a daily basis. So as you're now beginning to step out, how did the transition happen once you've gotten your paperwork? Life also is preparing you to be a real life coach, because that's the title of your identity right now, your mission. Um, you know, your life coach. How did you begin to put it together now to have it to become the way by which you're going to work? You're going to make that transition from the head to the heart, and we call that transition from the natural mind to the subconscious mind. How did you make that, and what was that battle like, Michelle?
I started making a lot of big decisions. And the first one was once I got my certification, I started working and having clients on the side as I was still working at my very busy corporate career. And just those handful of early clients really helped me prove to myself that I am very good at this, even though I didn't have a lot of practice. And I think the reason why I was good at it is because, to your point, I just cleared up who I've always been. It's like my being in my full self. So that was really really important to me, and I felt very much in alignment when I was coaching. And so I decided that I was going to quit my corporate job. I had a contract to stay for X amount of time, and every time it would get close, they would offer me more money to stay longer,
More money.
which I yeah. Yeah, and so that was something that was it was sort of a direct. I knew I wouldn't make a lot of money as a coach when I first started, but I just had the intuition and the belief in myself that I can do this. I can help people and make a living from doing it. And so eventually, when they offered for me to stay longer with more money, I thought that I'm going to draw the line. This is going to be it. I'm going to go all in on myself. I'm going to bet on me, and I'm just going to do this. So I did. I say that as a sentence like it was not that big of a deal, but it was a really big deal. And then at the same time, I got separated and eventually divorced from my ex-husband. And I moved from that, picturesque house that we lived in to a much smaller house, which we renovated. And so my whole life was really under reconstruction. I'd say a year before it got a little settled in. So all that time, there were days when it was really hard, but all that time I felt like I was still moving in the right direction. So I just kept working on my business, attracting new clients, taking good care of my kids, making a home that felt safe for all of us. And just, one day at a time, it came to fruition.
Yeah. I have a theory about this, because I grew up in the church, and I remember teaching and saying every faith journey, when you begin your faith journey, there is a test to see if you're serious about your faith, if you will. And I take stories out of the Bible where Peter is walking on water. This is a brave guy because he sees this figure and he looks at it and he says, "Oh, it looks like Jesus." And he says, "If it's you, can I come out in the water?" And Jesus says, "Yeah, come on out." But if you read before that, there was a storm. It wasn't a calm night, it was a storm. And Jesus was walking on water in this storm. And Peter said, "Let me come out and walk with you." So he stepped out and walked in the water in the midst of the storm. Watch this thing as he's continued walking towards Jesus. It says that he took his eyes off and he began to focus on the storm. And then he began to sink. And so in every faith journey, there is a test that will come. Now, Peter failed his test, but he has some sense where he just cried out. He says, "Jesus, save me, I'm dying." And it says Jesus grabbed him and picked him up. So he walked all the way almost close to Jesus because I'm sure Jesus, if I was Jesus, I would stop and look at him and say, "Come." He said, "Come." So if he said, "Come," that means he must have stopped. And he came pretty close, and it says when he sank, Jesus immediately grabbed him. Now, there's another story, Michelle, of this woman, issue of blood, it tells us. And she was a rich woman, spent all her money to get her healing because she believed in the healthcare system of the time. And the healthcare system failed her. She's dying. She's done. She's broke. And she said, it says that she heard this story about this guy healing people. And she said, in herself, it says she said within herself, include me right there, the inner being, the soul of this woman says, if I could touch the hem of his garment, I'm going to get my healing. And she takes off. And she's going against the crowd. That is her test. Is she going to stop or not? But it says that she kept pushing through regardless. And then she touched the hem of his garment. It didn't say she pulled it. She didn't do nothing. She just touched it. And Jesus turned around and says, "Who touched me?" And so all of our faith, and that's what you were doing. You were stepping out by faith. And your test was coming by your job going, "Hey, I'll give you a couple, $50,000 more."
Yep, that's
To
exactly
see.
right.
And
I'll give
so,
you what you've previously considered safety, right? I'll
yeah.
make you feel
And so
safe
your
by giving
test
you this.
came
It
to
did.
test you to see, are you serious or not? And when you
Mhm.
declared, yes, I am serious about it, that's when you began to shift and your healing is coming to you. But there were some things that needed to be adjusted, and it took you a year or so. The divorce, all of those things, scaling down, you beginning to reevaluate what is valuable, what is real, all of those things. You begin to reevaluate, and as you began to reevaluate that, on the background, on the other side, the dark side of the moon, that you don't see anything happening. All your healing, your client, your stuff is coming there. And you guys are going to have a meeting one day because of your faith. You made a declaration. So talk to us about that day when you met with your declaration that I am a life coach and you began to settle into it. What did that look like?
It didn't, I would say like a year after I started is when it started to look really nice, meaning I could believe it and it was good. But I would say at first, and this is, I think, good for anyone listening who's considering changing their life, it didn't feel super great. It felt really scary.
Hmm.
I knew it was the right
Yeah.
thing, but I think a lot of times people wait and they're waiting for it to feel good or for themselves to feel totally certain before they make a big change. And I personally don't think that a big change ever feels 100% good. I mean, even becoming a parent, I wanted to be a parent forever since I was a little girl. And when I became a parent, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? This person is fully relying on me. I have no idea what I'm doing. Every change, good or bad, has those moments where you wonder what you've done. But I think there's that inner knowing that's hard to describe that tells you that you're moving in the right direction. So that's kind of how it felt. It felt pretty scary, but it felt right. And, a year or two later, now I'm 6 years in, it feels great. I can't, every day at the end of the day, I think, I can't believe this is my job. This is so great. I feel so in alignment. It feels great now, but at first it was pretty scary.
Yeah, it'll always be scary, but the hallmarks within that scariness, as Michelle said, is that you feel, number one, that it is right, that you're in the right place. Number two, there's a degree within the storm, a degree of peace that is resides with you, even though it's scary. And between the combination of I feel that it's right and that peace that is holding you up, it's causing you, it wants you to rest and surrender totally and allow it to happen because, as it says, everything is possible in that quantum realm. It just needs a few things from you. It needs your belief. It needs your meditation. You need some stuff. And when you begin to do those things, your imagination, when you begin to see the reality of what you're asking for as real before it even shows up and all those different things, you're making a demand on that field to bring to pass your desired outcome. Another thing, mantras is one of the other things. You have those lists that people make. These are all tools that will help you to make, affirmation lists. I'll tell you one story before I stop boring you. Again, I grew up in the church, and God came to Abraham and he said, I want to make you a father of many nations. His name was Abram. And God comes up to him and says, I'm going to change your name from Abram to Abraham. And I realized what he was doing. Affirmation. He was making this man, and anyone that called him Abraham, they were saying affirmation as to who he is even before he had a child. So affirmation is another way by which you are tapping into that realm of the supernatural and bringing into the realm of the possibility. Because his wife is woman, and his wife Sarah was barren. He was 100 years old. She was 90 years old, and these two old folks got together, as they say, Michelle, and start knocking boots because God had told them that they were supposed to have a kid. Okay, and so they began to do what how a child is supposed to be born, and that child was born. But this is operation within the natural and the spiritual realm. Affirmation. God changed his name to begin to escort him into the realm of the spirit. You and I have to do these things. These are tools: meditation, affirmation, mantras, journaling. Get in and tap into the supernatural, and you will see results. So as you begin, you've gone through all of the imposter syndrome, you've gone through all of those funny things that we battle when we step out on our own and become entrepreneur in the realm. Talk to us about your podcast. And you guys, we're going to provide everything for you guys to get into Michelle's podcast because she's working primarily with women, and you women are superior to us in so many different ways. We are still little boys, while you guys are able to grow up much faster and think much faster than us and all the different things. And you guys are so superior to us, and yet we put such crazy demands on you. And she has a podcast to assist the women in identifying all of these different demands and how to make the right decision to bring the desired outcome, how to change your life. So we're going to give you guys access to all her so that you can become a subscriber in her podcast so that you can learn from her. So here you are, Michelle. How did the podcast come out? Because I know for me, there's a story behind it too. How did yours come? Because you have this driving force to want to help. You are in the life force, the life coach field. How did the podcast come about?
Yeah. So I had been working as a life coach for about 5 years and making a good living at doing that. And I had come up against some clients, potential clients who weren't able to work with me financially speaking. And so I just, once again, had an instinct, an internal knowing to be able to things for free that could help people change their life. And so I created the podcast based on that. So it comes out, I envisioned myself, as you said, I was my first client. So I envisioned myself when I was feeling really overwhelmed, really focused on what other people thought about me. And I just pictured myself getting ready for work on Mondays and how overwhelming it would feel. So I put out the podcast on Monday mornings, and they're usually pretty short, and they just have encouraging words and then specific actions you can take for that week to try to make your life feel a little bit less stressful and a little bit overwhelming so that you can be present and enjoy one precious life that we have.
And we are going to put all those links on you men to get over to her podcast and subscribe because um, the principles are for humans. The principles will be effective for men just as it is effective for women. So you men get in there, swallow your pride, and listen and learn. Because as I said, actually, when I was going through my trauma, one of my dark times, this elderly lady gave me this book by Piliana Van Zandt and she wrote specifically for women. And I had the same kind of, you know, look on my face. And she said this very same thing that I just said, that the principles are not gender specific. Principles are human specific. And I read that book and it set me free. And so that's why I invited you men to come, because I know what had happened to me personally. And so the principles are not gender specific. They are all about us as an individual human being, and it'll free you just like it'll free a woman. So don't worry about it. Get past that ego and that pride, and get save yourself, man. So this has been a good conversation, and I am going to come by and I preach what I practice what I preach. I'm going to subscribe to, and I'm going to be listening on a Monday, and I'm going to make sure that I'm a part of that. And you guys, you subscribe, you hit that bell so that you can receive that notification ASAP and you're able to listen to it before you guys hit the work and get into that mindset that that we are familiar with. So, Michelle, I want to thank you so much for coming by Threads of Enlightenment and spending time with me, your precious time and your wonderful journey, your powerful story that you shared with us for free. And so I want to thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate you and what you're putting out into the world.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.